Assalamu alaikum. Now I would like to talk about growth adaptation. Start with this. This is a picture of a heart, and this is a left ventricle, which is kind of hypertrophied. This is right ventricle, which is kind of normal. So this is a picture of left ventricular hypertrophy, and we know that uh, in these three places, that means cardiac muscle, nervous tissue, and skeletal muscle, as they are permanent cell. In these three cases there is only hypertrophy. In permanent cell there is no hyperplasia. In permanent cells only undergo hypertrophy, no hyperplasia. And this hypertrophy involves in gene activation, protein synthesis, protein synthesis, and production of organelles. And if you think about the mechanism of the hyperplasia results in production. Hypertrophy actually in simply means increase in size of the cell, and hypertrophy actually means increase in size of the cell. On the other hand, hyperplasia actually means increase in number of the cell. This is a picture of prostate. This is benign prostatic hyperplasia. It is one form of hyperplasia. It means increase number of the cell, and this number increases with the help of stem cell. And I have already told you that there are some places where there is no stem cell. These are called permanent cell, like cardiac muscle, nervous tissue, and skeletal muscle. So in these three places there is no hyperplasia, only hypertrophy. And hyperplasia means hyperplasia there are some physiological hypertrophy and there are some physiological process, there are some pathological process, like in uterus. In uterus during pregnancy there is both hypertrophy and hyperplasia. On the other hand, in cardiac muscle, as it is permanent cell, in here there is only hypertrophy. And there are some pathological hyperplasia happens in endometrial hyperplasia, which leads to dysplasia and ultimately leads to cancer. Endometrial hyperplasia leads to dysplasia, and it can convert into cancer. But this BPH, benign prostatic hyperplasia, it doesn't increase risk of prostate cancer. But endometrial hyperplasia, there is increased risk of prostate cancer. Now if I told you about atrophy, atrophy means a decreasing size of the organ, and this decrease is due to any stress or due to decrease in blood supply. Atrophy usually happens by two mechanisms. One is ubiquitin degradation pathway. This is the ubiquitin degradation pathway. The ubiquitin, this folded protein is tagged with this ubiquitin, and after tagging with this ubiquitin with the intermediate filaments of the cytoskeleton, this is destroyed by proteasome. These ubiquitin tagged Ubiquitin-tact cytoskeleton is destroyed by proteasome. This is one process. Another process is autophagy. Autophagy is formation of vacuoles, and in these vacuoles there is lysosome, and lysosome is responsible for degradation of the cell. And this, when these autophagic vacuoles is formed, these vacuoles fuse with these lysosomes. These vacuoles, autophagic vacuoles, fuse with these lysosomes, which is a hydrolytic enzyme, and breaks this cellular component. Next thing is, this is a picture of a Barrett esophagus. In Barrett esophagus, in here, this is a classical example of metaplasia. Barrett esophagus is the classical example of metaplasia. What happens in Barrett's, that we know that this is esophagus, this is stomach. Esophagus is lined by non-keratinized stratified squamous epithelium, and stomach is lined by a columnar epithelium. And we know that stomach has a high capacity of resisting or take high capacity of handling the acid. When there is what happens in here, that is acid reflux from esophagus. This acid reflux from the stomach, when there is acid reflux, it causes the changing of this lining, that squamous columnar junction, which is lined by squamous epithelium, it is changed into columnar epithelium containing goblet cell. And this is the thing happens in Barrett esophagus, and this is metaplasia. And this metaplasia happens due to reprogramming of the cell via reprogramming of stem cell. It happens via reprogramming of stem cell. This is high in that these Barrett esophagus, these metaplasia happens due to reprogramming of stem cell. And the wonderful thing is it is reversible. It is reversible if you remove the stressor. And treatment, for example, treatment of gastroesophageal reflux may reverse Barrett esophagus. And under persistent stress, metaplasia can progress to dysplasia. If metaplasia progresses to dysplasia, and ultimately it can lead to esophageal carcinoma, and that is the bad consequence. That is the bad consequence of developing of adenocarcinoma of the esophagus from Barrett esophagus, because it can progress to. This is the histological picture of a Barrett esophagus. And a notable exception is apocrine metaplasia of the breast. Apocrine metaplasia of breast causes increase. Apocrine metaplasia of the breast doesn't increase the risk of cancer. This is a notable exception. Okay. And another is vitamin A deficiency can result in metaplasia. Vitamin A deficiency, the thin mucosal vitamin A deficiency vitamin A deficiency, the thin squamous lining of the conjunctiva undergo metaplasia. Thin squamous lining of the conjunctiva undergoes metaplasia, and this change led to this. This is the picture of keratomalacia, and this keratomalacia happens due to this metaplastic change due to metaplasia, because in vitamin A deficiency the thin squamous lining of the conjunctiva undergoes metaplasia into stratified keratinized squamous epithelium, and these change are called keratomalacia. And another example of metaplasia is this. This is the picture of myositis ossificans. This is the calcified area. This is the calcified area, and it can be separate from the rest of the bone. You can you can be dodged by that it might be osteosarcoma, but it is not osteosarcoma, because in osteosarcoma there is some ray pattern, and in osteosarcoma you cannot differentiate from the you cannot separate from the actual calcified area, because osteosarcoma is a bone tumor which involves the metaphysis. So this is a picture of myositis ossificans, and myositis ossificans is mesenchymal tissue can undergo metaplasia, and this mesenchymal or connective tissue can undergo metaplasia, and this is the classical example of this myositis ossificans. Now dysplasia means disordered growth. For example, in dysplasia, the common example is cervical intraepithelial neoplasia, CIN1, CIN2, CIN3, and ultimately it can lead to cervical cancer. Ultimately it can lead to cervical cancer. Dysplasia is reversible. And in theory, and with the elevation of inciting stress, if the stressor persists, dysplasia progresses to carcinoma. If the stressor persists, dysplasia can progress to carcinoma. And now, what is aplasia? Aplasia is a failure of cell production during embryogenesis, like unilateral renal agenesis. And hypoplasia, the classical example of hypoplasia is streak ovary, usually seen in Turner syndrome. This is a picture of streak ovaries. This is another picture of streak ovaries. And that means decrease in cell production during embryogenesis, resulting in relatively small organ. And that's all about growth adaptation.